Fore from the Scottish Community Safety Network, and speaking today with Shirley from the Community Safety Partnership in Edinburgh. Shirley, do you want to just introduce yourself and your job role?
Yeah. So good morning, I'm Shirley McClaren. I'm the Community Safety Manager for Edinburgh and have lead responsibility for the Edinburgh Community Safety Partnership within Edinburgh, which brings together partners from the community safety elements and also criminal justice. It's a joint board to look at how we tackle community safety or community justice in a wider sense within Edinburgh. And once a year we have a special meeting where we decide the priorities for the following year. So this year it was the development of a community safety strategy rather than an antisocial behaviour strategy. We looked at the wider context. The three priorities out of that are domestic noise, young people, and cybercrime in around safeguarding of children and things when they're on the internet. We're seeing a huge increase in that across the city. And then we have the COJOIP, which we report on. So some of the key themes that are coming out of that are acute care for people that have been affected by their past, and you'll all be aware of ACEs at the moment, and so we're looking at how do we implement that to make sure that all of our staff address all of that and work with people in the most appropriate manner. The other things that are a priority for us at the moment are street drinking. Street begging are an issue within Edinburgh. Hoarding has come up. So we're looking at how do we tackle hoarding. You can't just go into somebody's house and remove all their belongings. They've got such emotional ties to that. It ties in with mental health. So we're currently developing a policy, and the way we're going forward is pictures of conditions of a property and which part they would fall into, so that it's easier for all of our staff to identify which part of the spectrum people are on from hoarding. One of the issues that's come up recently is the street drinking, and more so within parks, and people urinating in parks once they've had quite a lot of alcohol. You'll be aware that under COVID-19, most of the pubs are closed. However, a lot of them are now doing off sales. Yeah. So people are now starting to buy drink, and actually we're starting to see more street drinking again in parks and things, which has a huge impact on families and young people trying to utilise parks. Some are concerned that the street drinkers in there, so they won't go into the parks. So at the last partnership meeting, it came up as being an emerging trend within the city. So what we agreed to do was to set up a community improvement partnership. So we have thematic community improvement partnerships where we have an issue, an emerging trend, and we bring together partners to look at how do we tackle this strategically. Is there legislation that we could utilise? What support can we get in for people that are in parks that are, utilising street drinking? So it looks to encompass all of that. So at the moment in Edinburgh, we have a drinking bylaw, which is different from a number of other cities. So in Edinburgh, you can drink in the street as long as you don't behave or likely to behave in an antisocial behaviour manner. Yeah. Police Scotland enforce that. Police Scotland are keen for us to have a similar model to Glasgow, where there's no drinking in public. Edinburgh, the whole community is not keen to go down that route, as we feel that Edinburgh has a cafe society. We have a lot of park area, especially in the city centre. We have the gardens, we have the meadows, we have the Queen's Park. And it would mean that people couldn't even go out for a picnic and have a glass of wine in those areas. And Edinburgh's quite clear that we shouldn't stop something and stop people doing something because of a select few. You know, we shouldn't stop everybody from enjoying their space. So that's an added complication, because it would be easy just to say no street drinking and that's the bylaw and stop it, and then, you know, it's a kind of a criminal offence should you do it after that and refuse to kind of stop drinking, when Police Scotland would ask you to do. We feel that's quite draconian within our city. So we need to kind of get a balance between how we introduce and anything that we do, and reviewing the current bylaw. So we're just establishing a community improvement partnership with partners. So there'll be Police Scotland on that. There'll be kind of criminal justice element to that, because what happens if somebody does continue to breach it and is charged, you know, actually they'll get community payback. Actually, kind of, how do you do that? Do they get a fine? You know, and some of these people, you know, they need support, not fined, which is kind of a big issue for us. So we will have our legal team around the table. We will have the licensing service, you know, that provide the licenses. We will have NHS. We will have Police Scotland. We will look to have somebody from the licensing trade, although that's going to be quite difficult with COVID-19, you know, because they've got enough going on, you know, that they're not kind of trading at the moment, or if they are going to be trading soon, you know, the measures they're going to have to put in place for that. We're also going to have our parks management team around the table, because we have park management rules, you know, about behaviour in parks, which includes the gardens, the Queen's Park, you know, and all the parks across the city. And actually, how do we take those rules for in parks and implement them and making sure that they kind of complement the drinking bylaw? But the other thing you need to look at is what services are out there to enforce any rules that you bring in. And actually, do we need to look at kind of the legislation? Should there be different legislation? Does it look at overconsumption, over-provision of alcohol in certain areas? So it will look at that wider context, which kind of also looks into how licences are provided. And the council has recently done some work around how licences are provided in Edinburgh, and the criteria around that. So that's quite controversial, because lots of people still see over-provision in element parts of the city. So it's going to be much more complicated than just looking at the drinking bylaw and actually people drinking in the street. We need to kind of look at all the rest of it. So that work's just going to start. That will report back to the Edinburgh Community Safety Partnership, probably an interim report in December, and then a full report kind of next June on what they've done, what they've implemented, all the rest of it. And there'll need to be full consultation if we're looking to change the drinking bylaw. So that work's just starting. So the Edinburgh Community Safety Partnership's still ongoing, even though there's COVID-19. We had our first board meeting, and we did that through Skype. It worked well. We had about 25 people on. We had all the reports, we had all the priorities that were due to report to that meeting, and it worked really well. The next one's due in September, so we're looking at teams this time, but just because you can then, it's easier to share your papers online to everybody at the meeting, and it's a true partnership now. Previously, it used to be quite a lot of the time it was the council that kind of would do all the reports and facilitate all the meetings. now it's partners that kind of lead on different elements of it. And in December each year, we set the priorities for the following year. So it's working really well. It was proving quite difficult at the beginning, just to try and look at how we're engaging as stakeholders in the partnership out with your normal work, around these priorities. That's all kind of because everybody was just running around at the beginning of COVID-19 introduction, trying to kind of set up and working from home and how are we going to facilitate things. The buildings being closed and it not being appropriate for people to come out. So the best way we found was to do Skype, look at Teams, so that the partnership can still function. And that, because it's a crucial part of the work for the citywide. We have the localities, but we also have to look at coordinating things as a citywide, rather than just thinking about each different locality, because there's emerging issues that come and affect a number of different kind of areas. So the partnership went well. There was quite a few actions out of it. Certainly the drinking bylaw SIP was an action to come out, and we'll progress that. One of the other things we're looking at the moment, which kind of ties in, is the nighttime economy, and looking at, would Edinburgh want a nighttime economy coordinator? So there is another SIP being established to look at that, because there's a number of them across the world, and looking at best practice. And actually, from a community safety point of view, we have a number of services that the partnership funds. So we have the transport marshals that help with kind of the dispersal at the end of the night within the city and putting people into taxis. We have street assist, who provide a safe place for anybody kind of who's vulnerable. That might be through drink or drugs, or it might just be that somebody's lost their friends, needs somewhere to charge their phone, have been involved in a fight or a scuffle and needing minor first aid. So we provide that service to try and protect the hospital and the A&E for people that really need to be there, rather than somebody's just twisted their ankle. And sometimes it's people that are so inebriated that they can't get public transport home. So we pick them up off the street, take them in, sober them up as much as we can to get them that they can either access public transport, or in some cases, when we call home to make sure that there's somebody there, we'll transport them home so that we know they've got home safe and there's somebody there to look after them. In other cases where we're unable to do that, we do at the end of the service, and the service finishes about 2:30 in the morning, 4 o'clock. So we then hand the people over to Police Scotland. They're not put in the cells, but they're just taken to a local police station, and kind of just so that somebody can watch them until they're sober enough to be able to take public transport. So we've got a lot of initiatives around the nighttime economy for keeping people safe, but it's much wider. That SIP has been delayed due to COVID-19, because we really can't kind of try to get the licensing trade involved kind of while all of this is going on for them. So that was due to report in December of this year, but we've moved that to June next year based on kind of the implications of COVID-19. So
just a wee couple of questions on the drinking thing, particularly in parks and the possible changes to bylaws. So yeah, obviously there's a lot of pressure just now from pubs and clubs or the leisure industry to reopen in some form. So do you think that might have a positive or negative impact on the drinking in parks if beer gardens were to open again? And
to be fair, I don't think it'll have as big an impact as we think.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, kind of the beer gardens are closed. When the beer gardens open, it won't be people that are drinking in the street that go to beer gardens. So we're still going to have people drinking in the street. The only difference we might see is that instead of people that aren't usual street drinkers that occasionally go to the park, they might go to the beer gardens. So you might see a kind of small reduction, but the hardcore people that are drinking in the parks, drinking in the streets, are going to continue.
Yeah, I suppose I'm thinking from a perspective of living in Glasgow. So obviously, as you mentioned, Glasgow's got a complete blanket ban on street drinking. And certainly in the summer months, it is often a problem in Glasgow where parks, especially Kelvin Grove Park, can sometimes become maybe quite off-putting to families because there are so many people drinking, and it's not. I mean, I can't be sure, but it seems to me that when I have been there, it's not always been sort of the very hardcore drinkers that you maybe refer to. It is just sort of younger people who, and maybe not even younger people, it might be of any age, but I mean, a lot of the time it is younger people, and they're not problematic drinkers. They're not maybe suffering from other major problems. They're just out wanting to enjoy the sun, have a drink, and sometimes it will result in antisocial behaviour. So, yeah, I was maybe sort of thinking from that perspective as to whether Edinburgh maybe has similar type of.
I would say we have probably similar types within the gardens and the meadows. Of that. A lot of the smaller parks that are within your communities is where your street drinkers would be. And smaller gardens, they tend not to go to the gardens and Holyrood Park. They tend to kind of stick to their own little kind of small garden areas, parks within the communities. So we do have kind of, if we look at the meadows, it's within quite an affluent area of the city with a lot of student accommodation because the universities are around there. So on the meadows, you tend to see it's groups of people that probably taking a disposable barbecue, a few kind of drinks. Some kind of will probably get quite inebriated kind of by the end of the night, especially if it's really hot, because alcohol kind of changes when there's heat around. You either drink more because you're hot, and you need kind of to cool down a bit, or you're out longer. Where if it's cold, you maybe a couple of hours, where people will tend to go from early afternoon straight through to like 10 o'clock at night because we're in the lighter nights as well. So what we tend to do around that is if there's no antisocial behaviour, and you usually find there's a lot of families around because they'll take a barbecue, because that area part of the city, it's a lot of tenements, kind of large tenements, but a lot of tenements where people don't have outdoor space. So they'll go to the meadows. So we have a mobile CCTV van within the city that we'll actually kind of just deploy, and it'll kind of park up, put the cameras on. It's all marked up so people can see that it's there, because we don't have other cameras within the park, just because of kind of the way the trees go and different things within the park. But we also have a deployment of police officers within the city centre, particularly at the weekends. So they just wander around the park, and we have the environmental wardens just wandering around the park. So there's usually some sort of enforcement element within the park from the council, and they will only take action if they need to. Quite a lot of the time, you'll find that people engage with them just on a general sense. People will ask them directions, that kind of stuff. So we have facilities within the park, usually especially on nice long weekends and when it's hot, that are there. And if they need to, then they'll take the appropriate action. And I have to say, I think we've got the right approach, rather than just a blanket ban, and kind of allowing people to actually enjoy outdoor space because it's their city. They pay for it ultimately, you know, for the upkeep, and they pay for that space. And it's really important that people get that. You know, it's good for your kind of mental health to be outside in the sunshine. It's good for your health with getting vitamin D, you know. So we could have people behind closed doors where it's hidden, you know, people drinking. And that then probably will lead to people putting the music on. So it affects neighbours and has a huge kind of impact on people's living. Where if you're in a park, there's much more space for people to play music at a decent level and things, and it's not really going to affect anybody. Where if we refused that and people then had friends round, loud music, you know, our night team, our community safety night team would be inundated with calls to houses for kind of parties and things and noise. And that has much more of a detrimental effect on that community rather than allowing drinking in the street. So it's a real balance that we have to kind of strike here.
You'd also kind of mentioned the antisocial behaviour element of street drinking, and at the start you'd sort of alluded to your CSP looking at ACEs and trauma a bit more. So I was just kind of wondering, just obviously you'll know that at my other job I'm an alcohol brief intervention practitioner, so sort of safer drinking and interventions around alcohol is something I'm quite interested in. So, and I suppose in the context as well of obviously there's been a lot of talk in America just now about police reform, where rather than have police officers be the first point of call for certain issues, social issues, that maybe trauma counsellors or younger people's counsellors or addiction specialists would be the preferred route. So I was just kind of wondering, if there is a sort of ASB related incident because of street drinking and someone is sort of reported or arrested or whatever, are there any interventions, like health interventions that take place around that in terms of trying to intervene? Just because purely from my own personal experience and work experience, it tends to be the case that if people are being arrested or if people are becoming antisocial when they're drinking, it tends to be a sign of them having maybe an underlying problem with alcohol. So
what we have at the moment, we have the Edinburgh Drug and Alcohol Partnership, who fund the services within each locality. And we have family and household support officers. So we don't have community safety officers that just have an enforcement role. We have family and household support. So they're there to work with the whole family. So we might get a complaint of antisocial behaviour, but they'll work with the whole family to address that, but also look at the other issues that are affecting the family. So that might be that there's alcohol, you know, it could be that there's drugs within the household. So they'll work with them around those issues and they'll refer them on to other services. And they, in the first instance, they might go with them to that other service so that they engage with that. Street drinkers, kind of through police, they can refer into family and household support. We have weekly meetings. We have daily catch-ups with police around the calls that came in the day before. Do we need to kind of engage with any of these families? And through the community safety strategy, one of the things that we're looking at is training all our staff in ACEs training, so that they can help and support, because it's really important that it's the right person and the people that the family are engaged with. Rather than ploughing services in to that family, it's really important that there's a lead around that family. Now that could be family and household support, it could be anybody from the voluntary sector, whoever's that lead. It's about them taking it and referring in where it's required, and not everybody just ploughing into a family, because that overwhelms families and they stop engaging. So it's about working towards and doing a plan with each family, or even an individual, It doesn't have to be a family, and it's about taking it at their pace to resolve the issues. And it's all about keeping people in their homes rather than eviction, antisocial behaviour orders. It's about trying to work with people and resolving issues rather than taking enforcement. Enforcement's there if we can't get people to engage with us and change the behaviour.
Yeah.
And we're quite clear, you're never going to stop all antisocial behaviour within a family. It is about modifying the behaviour. It's not about trying to eradicate everything, because that doesn't happen for anybody. We all behave in an antisocial behaviour manner at some point in our lives, whether that's having too much to drink and kind of coming out the pub and laughing and joking and singing at the top of your voice walking down the street. That's antisocial behaviour to somebody. You might only do it kind of once a year, once every 6 months, but everybody can behave in an antisocial behaviour manner. Doesn't mean to say that you're a bad person. Yeah. It's about how do we cope with that, and if you exhibit on a more basis, how do we work with you to modify that behaviour? We're not looking for citizens within the city that kind of conform to every single rule that's out there, because it would be a really dull world if we did.
So just picking up as well on a couple of things you said, you sort of mentioned that obviously community safety partnerships work's very important still, despite the COVID crisis. Well, actually, I think some of the chat we've been having with other partners has been around that actually the COVID crisis has shown that community safety and the areas that it deals with have actually been shown to be of the utmost importance in the COVID crisis, and that partnership working is more important than ever, really.
Certainly within Edinburgh, I think different partners from the partnership have linked with different partners. So we've had some early releases from prison. So it's about how do we make sure that the people that are coming out are supported when they come out, they have accommodation, because we can't have people sleeping in the streets, not having a roof over their head, and particularly at the moment, when people are so much at risk. Looking at what health support do they have. So there was that coordination going on around the partnership. There's certainly, I would say, the community safety services have come to their fore. So we've got family and household support still engaging with people. We might not be engaging with them in their houses, but we're still engaging. People are in their houses most kind of 20 hours a day, if you go out for some exercise or shopping. So a lot more people are in their house. So there's a lot more complaints coming in, because normally you're not in your house during the day, so you don't hear your neighbours.
Yeah.
And you're only there for a couple of hours, so actually it's bearable. But when you're in there all day and you're hearing it, it soon changes. We're finding for us that we're getting a lot more people calling and complaining that their neighbours are not adhering to the COVID-19 rules.
Yeah.
To the lockdown rules. And that's been quite interesting, in the fact that people are much more ready and willing to actually report incidents of things. So I'm not sure if that will continue long term, that when we come out of lockdown, that people then continue to report neighbours for antisocial behaviour that they might not have done before. Yeah. So that service has been really interesting. It's been really busy. We're seeing a change in things, the pattern of complaints that are coming in. We're not getting as many day-to-day noise complaints, but we are getting noise complaints of a different nature, and we're getting like parties, but it's mostly breaching the lockdown, for noise, because there's other people in the house and things. But it's certainly been interesting. We've got the community safety night team who would normally do patrols at night. in hotspot areas or areas that we have problems with at night. We've moved them to support CCTV within the city, just for numbers, and we've taken out the mobile CCTV van. So they're targeting areas where we've had complaints of people kind of having house parties every weekend, or where there's been reports of youths gathering. So they're just driving around the hotspot areas, kind of just showing a presence. That seems to be supporting a lot of people and reassuring people that the council's still out there providing services. And I think that's as important as actually any enforcement powers or any action that we take, from finding kind of noise or whatever, that the public reassurance that the services are still out there. I think it's kind of, especially at this point when people are kind of, if people's been in for lockdown the whole time, you know, they're getting really anxious about coming out in the streets and stuff because they've just been in. So actually having services like that out in the areas is actually really reassuring for people and makes them feel safer when they're coming out, when they're anxious enough, you know, especially if they've been shielding. You know, they've been in for what, 11 weeks, nearly 12 weeks now, asked to stay in a bit longer. I know that family members that we've got that are shielding, they're really anxious about coming out. And kind of we've had chats, and some of the things we've been seeing is, you know, like police within the area or community safety, the CCTV van, they've seen it out the window. They think that that's kind of, that services are out there, they're feeling a bit more reassured about that. So it has both roles. It has kind of dealing with the problems, but also providing that public reassurance. And I think that's key.
And that's possibly an issue as well around not just ACEs, which is obviously childhood experiences, but trauma in general, and being trauma aware, because there is a lot of talk about that from this pandemic, and pandemics do cause trauma because people are understandably worried about a lot of things, and therefore, especially people who might have already been vulnerable or might have already had mental health problems and different other things, that this will have exacerbated that potentially for some people. So,
definitely. So, and I think kind of that's some of the services that family household support and that are providing for people, is that kind of reassurance and guidance and support and direction if they need it. You know, we have a mental health project who put a newsletter out every Friday on what's happening within the city. That's forwarded to all our staff so that they can actually engage the services there that they can direct people to, you know, for mental health. There's tips in it about how to kind of support people, little tips on kind of trying to alleviate kind of some of it. So that goes out to all our staff on a weekly basis. So that's kind of helping, you know, and there's guidance for parents and all different things in it. So that's kind of helping. So all these things are helping. They would help in the normal, but I think them coming more to the fore under COVID.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, I'm going to leave it there, Shirley, because you kind of touched on the other questions I had around changes to ways to working. So you had mentioned that obviously using Skype and Microsoft Teams, and certainly at SESN we've been using both for board meetings and meetings with partners, and we'll probably look at more of this stuff. Maybe just one wee question on that. So we are probably now sort of thinking that this opens up an opportunity to engage more with professionals across not just Scotland but the world more easily, and to make connections and to keep those. Do you see any kind of like permanent changes to the way you're going to work from this? Or
definitely, I think this has shown that you can have meetings without being in a meeting room.
Yeah.
You know, and they function and you get the same done. And I would actually say you get it done quicker by, you know, on Teams. You don't have the travel time on either end. everybody's can hear. People can go and do other things while it's on, if they're not a key to that element. You can be checking emails and stuff, if you're just listening. So I think it's a much more productive way of working. I don't see, like, some of my staff that are not essential, that are in the office. I see my staff working from home a lot more. I mean, at the moment, we normally work 1 to 2 days from home, if we can, depending on the type of work we do. But I can see staff being much more at home working. Going forward, that would need to be kind of discussed with trade unions and agreed, and all the health and safety measures and all of that put in. And it's one of the things that I've kind of been discussing with staff. How do you see yourself working in the future? Do you see the use of Skype, kind of Teams? We've talked a bit about the fact that just missing people in the office and having chance conversations. And I was saying, well, there's nothing stopping you calling somebody on Teams or Skype, and having that interaction out with your own team. You don't have to be in an office to do that. We can do it on this. So staff are starting to kind of look at it in different ways and look at how they can actually engage with people.
Yeah. I think that's a good point as well. Is that, I mean, there might be some things that we do miss about being in the office, but it's not a case of it's mandatory working from home. So if people would rather come in, they can come in. And certainly SCSN has an agile working policy and has had for a while now. So for us, this hasn't been a huge change, but maybe the change has been that we probably do now see we could do meetings, and for us, we could do regional meetings without having to have a lot of travel, or we could have meetings with people on the islands. Although I suppose it does possibly sort of bring up the issue again of access to Wi-Fi in rural communities and different other things as well. So there is maybe that kind of stuff, and I guess access to the internet as a right to people.
And certainly I know in Edinburgh that's one of the things we're looking at when council tenancies, and at the moment we're installing kind of wireless connections in all our multi-storey blocks so that residents can have free access to Wi-Fi. And I think that's really important. And I think even more so, this is shown if people are locked in, in their properties, can't go out once a day, actually kind of Wi-Fi, has been a blessing, the internet, just to connect with family, Skype meetings with family and catch up and see things. And I mean, I know we've been doing family quizzes and, all of that kind of stuff. And it's just that engagement. And I couldn't comprehend not having Wi-Fi, and having access to that. And you're right, kind of the islands and things, we need to kind of get the infrastructure right for people that enables them to do things differently. And I don't think we will ever go back to what was the norm. I think life has changed, and the way we go forward, life has changed for everybody, whether that's working, shopping, holidays, keeping in touch with people. I think that's changed forever through this process, and that's not been a bad thing. I think there is some elements of it that aren't great, but I think there's other elements of it that have actually shown a completely beneficial, different way, and actually will free up resources. If staff are not travelling 2 hours there and back for meetings, that will make a huge difference to people.
I suppose there's even just, again, bringing it into the community safety thing, that if less people are travelling to work, less traffic on the roads, it brings in active travel and more cycling and different other things. So there's a lot of different community safety areas that, again, comes into that, and about making communities safer, making roads safer, making
people's health, all of that. I think there's probably a lot to say about people's health, because people are walking more, cycling, not just jumping in the car, not jumping in the bus. But I think the downside is the mental health. impact that it's had, and I think that's going to need some real support going forward. Because I also think because it's not your choice, there's that element that has been enforced on people.
Well, that's one of the main things, obviously, that causes mental health problems is loss of control or loss of agency. So yeah, totally.
So I think that for me is the biggest downfall of all of this. I think there's some real benefits, but I think there is some real downfalls. And I suppose I'm lucky I've got a family at home. If you're on your own, like one of my sons is on his own and not seen anybody apart from Skype and all the rest of it for 11 weeks, at face to face. So that's quite difficult,
And of course, it can go the other way where you can have a family and that can make it more difficult because you're young children.
I mean, I think that's the one thing that surprised us at the moment is we're not seeing a huge climb in domestic abuse at the moment.
Edinburgh, no.
But I think what we are thinking that once the lockdown restrictions have been lifted, we're going to see a huge spike. Because at the moment, a lot of it is that the partner knows where the person is because they're in lockdown. Then people aren't getting to go out to the pub and coming home and causing disturbance and trauma to people. But once we start to see the lift of all of this, that we're expecting to see a huge spike at that point rather than now. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how that goes.
And I think definitely it's one of the priorities that's emerging, not just in Scotland but worldwide. That we're seeing this. So, okay, Shirley, I'm going to wrap up the chat there. So, thanks very much for that.
No, thank you.